the TeachPitch podcast. We are very excited to be launching a series of interviews for TeachPitch, a global community of tens of thousands of subscribers from over 205 countries who all have a desire to improve the state of education in this world. And for these interviews, we have selected a number of our subscribers who have achieved great things. And by great, I mean amazing. Think of former presidents, entrepreneurs, fashion designers, hospital builders, non-profit founders, authors, journalists, doctors, etc. And what all our guests have in common is that despite their great success, they've encountered many enormous challenges. So what were these challenges and how did they overcome them? That is what we are going to be talking about here. My name is Aldo de Pap and I'm massively looking forward and very grateful you can join us on this journey. So sit back, relax, and download the podcast here.
Absolutely. Inclusiveness has been, I think, the core of our mindset. We have focused our activities working a lot with youth, understanding that they will definitely be an important factor of our growth and driver of change at the same time. And then, above all, we focused a lot on really bringing in, and you mentioned the other part of our society, women and girls, particularly into tech, something which was not seen as maybe an interesting profession, now has become almost a 50% of women and girls' participation in the tech sector.
Yeah. A very warm welcome, everyone. Very happy you could make it to this Thursday episode. Very happy you are listening to episode 52 of the TeachPitch podcast season 3. And for this interview, we are going back to the Balkans and more specifically to Pristina, the beautiful capital of Kosovo, where I had the great honor to speak to Uranik Begu. And Uranik is the executive director of Innovation Center Kosovo. We again had the great honor of attending and speaking at a ThinkTech conference, and this time the Kosovo edition. And while being there, I seized the opportunity to speak to many interesting people who are seeking to dramatically change the situation in their country for the better. One of these people is Uranik Begu, who with the Innovation Center has helped thousands of startups, hundreds of products, and through its many events managed to support many ICT businesses in his country. I felt that Uranik and the center are well placed to assess how Kosovo is evolving, specifically when it comes to getting more people into technology and looking at the overall economic growth of the country. The conference we spoke at was called Building Bridges, and it was very inspiring to hear the many notable guests speak about the bridges they felt that needed to be built. Among others, we even had the Ministry of Industry and Innovation speak at this event, and I, for one, was very impressed with the drive, ambition, and energy of the young people attending this conference to change the situation in their country for the better. Uranik is a great spokesperson for these people, and I sincerely hope you take the time to listen to what he had to say. So with that, please enjoy episode 52, ThinkTech Kosovo with Uranik Begu.
This podcast is brought to you by Smartest, an app that uses artificial intelligence to let you create interactive quizzes for your class in a few seconds. Get started for free on app.smartest.io.
A very warm welcome to another episode of the TeachPitch podcast. This one is a special one because we're again hosted by the great theme of ThinkTech and more particularly landmark communication. So we're here at a great stage. Different from last time is that we're not in Tirana today, but we're in Pristina in the beautiful Kosovo. And we're going to talk about technology and the role of technology, how to get people in technology, and specifically the relationship between technology and innovation. And for that, I have the great honor to be sitting across from Uranik And Uranik, you are the executive director of ICK, the Innovation Center Kosovo. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here and visiting Kosovo, and for the kind words.
Yeah, thank you. Kosovo has been a great host thus far. I think Pristina is a beautiful, vibrant city with loads to offer. People are very, very friendly, so I feel very, very welcomed. And specifically when we talk technology, and ThinkTech and technology can be such a buzzword, right? You can throw it in everywhere, and it's almost like a magic wand. But I was wondering if you could help me target it a little bit more. How important is technology for Kosovo?
Well, obviously not just for Kosovo. We're living in a world where technology pretty much defines everything we do and how we do it. It defines new professions, new opportunities, new jobs. But above all, I think it defines also our well-beings as societies, the way we improve standard of living, the air we breathe, the food we eat, and so many things around it. Kosovo is the youngest nation in Europe, and obviously with the youngest population and demographics in Europe, has no other options but to embrace technology, but not just embrace it, but at the same time, in a way, be a facilitator and a driver of this change and the trends which are related to technology. Fortunately, we are seeing some amazing positive trends, particularly among youth, who are super talented, multilingual, adaptive, but also willing to take risks in testing and trying new technologies, but also being part of the bigger developments which I think are happening around Europe particularly, but also other countries globally.
And so you, as who's spearheading ICK,
yes.
So I've had a browse on your website, which I think is very impressive, and you have your statistics, right on the homepage. 470 products developed, 3,100 startups created, 5,500 businesses, 80% of which are in ICT, so again,
yes.
that technology. And you've organized 530 events that gathered more than 80,000 attendees. Those are quite impressive statistics. When did the journey start of ICK?
Yes. This year, in a couple of weeks, we celebrate our 10 years anniversary. It started as an initiative to really, think tank. Because tech was one of the sectors which was unfortunately not so popular at the time, 10 years ago. And it was not seen as a profession, but rather as a tool to maybe solve some issues which were immediate. On the other side, we had a completely inactive public administration or government initiative in terms of tech. And also bear in mind that Kosovo still suffers the consequences of the war which happened 20-some years ago. And the industry at that time was completely inexistent, or industries were emerging ones, mainly in the sector of production, manufacturing, wood processing, and textile. The only companies at the time that were dealing with ICT were mainly offering services for the government, but not really anything innovative on that side. So with all these elements in place, and with the high unemployment among youth in Kosovo, ICK became some sort of opportunity for them to really a home where young people could come learn, but also at the same time demonstrate their talent, try to create without being at fear of losing or failing. Because there was a community to support them and really nurture them on their way toward growth. 550 startups, obviously not all of them have been successful, but most of them are still up and running, while others have changed their business models. Definitely represents the will and the readiness of our young population to tackle issues that are pressing issues for us in our society through technology. We're talking here about health tech solutions, ed tech solutions, fintech, but also other solutions which are fit maybe on the social enterprise character. So yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great story. I also read about Kosovo. It's a year-on-year growing economy. Loads of innovation is embraced. It's recognized now as a republic by 97 states, more even
130. Yeah.
130. So I've read older statistics, but I'm happy to hear that.
Yes.
So you're growing in recognition. I believe even last week the German Bundeskanzler was visiting. And said some great things with regards to recognition for Kosovo, which I think will only accelerate the growth for Kosovo. So that's all good news. But you say 10 years ago things were very different. What do you think was the game changer when it comes specifically to technology? Where do you think what changed the dynamics?
Well, obviously during these 10 years, many things have happened globally. Okay. We're talking about the Tesla, we're talking about the growth of Google, Amazon, other spectrums. But also just within the last 3 years, we've had COVID, we had the war in Ukraine, which obviously have shifted up the total speed of transformation globally. And obviously Kosovo is not on a bubble. With higher demand for services and higher demand for, let's say, products in tech, then obviously we became also more visible, let's say, to this global. We're all witnessing an immense demand for talent. And obviously Kosovo is seizing still the opportunity which is out there by educating young people through training programs and so on and so on. This has been number one. Apart from it, I think Kosovo has had another characteristic. You mentioned let's say the political challenges of being recognized as a country. And I think tech and digital diplomacy has helped us through that. It has been super important for us to enlist ourselves within the global initiatives. So in perspective to ICK, one of the things we've really pushed forward and done is put Kosovo on a map in all of the global initiatives which are happening in the global startup ecosystem. We're organizing, for example, NASA Space App Challenge, Startup Weekend with Techstars, Global Entrepreneurship Week, Slush Kosovo, Startup Europe Week, and so many other initiatives, which in one hand has helped us without moving physically to bring the world to Kosovo, but at the same time bring Kosovo's potential and the best to the world. And technology is amazing because it allows you to do such things. Obviously, the participation of our young, talented people also has been, let's say, recognized in the sense of when I talk about NASA, for example, in 2016, a team of 8 students from Kosovo won the global competition. So myself and the winning team, we were then invited in Florida to witness a rocket launch, let's say in our honor as winners of this big NASA competition. That's just one of the many positive things that happen from here.
I'm so pleased for you, and I'm jealous now because I would have loved to see that rocket launch.
It failed 2 times.
Oh, it failed 2 times.
It was not an easy task to go there 3 times.
Not an easy launch, No, but it's good, and I'm very pleased for you. Yet the journey hasn't been without challenges. And just like in any other episode of the TeachPitch podcast, we're going to talk about challenges. And thank you for sending me 3 of your challenges, which all are synchronous with the journey of ICK. And as your first challenge, and you've hinted already towards it about where you were 10 years ago, you said building an ecosystem from scratch. That was not easy. So take me back 10 years ago when there was nothing, and how did you get it off the ground?
Well, we're talking in a time when everything, again, having in mind that Kosovo came from a pretty large war and destruction, at the same time was having in its political difficulties of getting institutions set up. So in 2000, we literally had no government. We had no budget. We were starting from zero. 10 years later, in 2012, when ICK was founded, obviously institutions, the ecosystem players were trying to set up their own institutions and take off ground. We're talking here about private universities, financial institutions, even companies, but also public institutions which are of a relevance. In this context, we were trying to do something which was super important, I think even relevant today, to change the mindset, because unfortunately these transitional countries in the region but also elsewhere, unfortunately produce not so good of a role models when it comes to business. Because transitional economies, people find shortcuts. They become rich quickly, oftentimes very well connected with the politicians, and corruption comes into mind. So we're trying to change our story of what entrepreneurship really is. We're trying to focus on young people who really demonstrate a talent, but also try to create solutions which would, yes, make them profitable business, but at the same time would be a role model on what we can do as a society through business. So in this context, education, training, setting up the elements of the ecosystem, but above all connecting them, because we're talking today about building bridges, it is super important. It is still challenging. It is throughout the world. There are elements of this ecosystem which are still missing. Let's say about access to finance is almost inexistent when we talk about innovation and we talk about startups and other elements. So, but there is still positive feel about where we can go and what can we do with it.
You can do that, And I can imagine what you said about there being an initial gold rush and it only being available for the selected few in the beginning. It's very difficult because you need to make it all inclusive to ensure that it will be a success. Otherwise, there's no point. Right?
Absolutely, inclusiveness has been, I think, the core of our mindset. Oftentimes, we see what they call ecosystems, which are completely isolated. Oftentimes targeting one group, industry, city, demographics, and so on. We have focused a lot to extend and expand our activities in other cities. We have focused our activities working a lot with youth, understanding that they will definitely be an important factor of our growth and driver of change at the same time. And then above all, we focused a lot on really bringing in, and you mentioned the other part of our society, women and girls, particularly into tech, something which was not seen as maybe an interesting profession, now has become almost a 50% of women and girls' participation in the tech sector.
That's great to hear, and great to hear that it's really all inclusive across the board. I mean, you already mentioned it because it's your second challenge. You say it's despite there being obvious benefits of working with a country like Kosovo or a company that is based in Kosovo, you say still it's challenging to market Kosovo as a potential destination. You earlier said, getting funding or getting funders or investors available. How do you currently do that? What's your current spiel?
Often, we've had a chance to go and visit and talk to people abroad, and through ICK, I've been in many international tech festivals, the famous ones. I was also a guest speaker in some of the most prestigious ones. Obviously, the number one question that comes to them is still there a war? So obviously, the consequences of war associated with Kosovo is not something that helps us. Apart from that, then there is also this political saga which continues unjustly with our political status. Although from here you don't see it, feel it, and you're oftentimes surprised, because even our 20-year-old people from Kosovo don't know the effects of war. They don't understand the war. I'm talking to my kids and others. I was like, okay, it's like a distant place or distant time. There was a war. But apart from it, it takes, I think, an extra effort to really prove that Kosovo is a safe place. It is a great potential. Although I think we have to do more on the regional branding, because it's not only about Kosovo, it's about the region. The markets are smaller, fragmented. So although there are some benefits, obviously, there are some shortfalls. But what's very interesting, again, going back to the latest developments due to COVID and the war in Ukraine, I think somehow the roles have shifted. Now it is the Kosovo companies and tech people who are really selecting and having options more on the plate. The global demand has really pushed some companies and entrepreneurs, but also big brands to come to nearshoring and kind of look for the options. So now the demand is growing. I think that problem of Kosovo will not be a problem any longer because obviously, yes, there has been some positive developments in one hand, but also there has been some global shifts which are putting Kosovo on a map. And I think it's up to us now to really deliver and treat well our partners, deliver, provide value in terms of services, and at the same time, be fair and build really a long-lasting partnership with these partners that we have in place.
When you say shifts, can you give an example of a shift?
Well, if 5 years ago, for example, we will go to a B2B event in Germany, oftentimes it would be difficult to speak in English. And, some people, some companies would come hesitant to even talk, obviously. It was not an option. Kosovo oftentimes. Nowadays, we have growing number of German companies, Austrian companies, even Italian, which Kosovo was not so known for. Albania obviously was, but Kosovo not for Italian companies. So they're looking at opportunities because talent is scarce. We're doing a lot in educating and equipping new people with new skills. And obviously in this regard, this is a good model. And I think it provides great opportunity both for foreign direct investors, but also for ourselves. Because remember, our ultimate goal is to keep young people in the country. And the tech sector, by far, is the only attractive sector which somehow helps young people stay at home by working for international brands.
I 100% agree. And therefore, I was also very happy to hear that events like ThinkTech, you mentioned Slush, there are more events.
Yes.
If you basically showcase that you can bring them to Kosovo, that would put the next generation at ease. A young developer is like, hey, it's also coming here. And I think that's definitely an advantage of Kosovo, that everything is brand new.
Absolutely.
So there are enormous blue sky advantages to really invest in that human capital and to keep them here.
We are proudly supported by Tony's, who have created a product that I absolutely love called Tonybox. It's an audible tool that allows the discovery of our world's most beautiful stories for children of all ages. We are the proud owner of a Tonybox, and our 3-year-old daughter listens to the Tony stories religiously, whether this is the Gruffalo, Cookie Monster, or her all-time favorite Elsa from Frozen. Loads of figurines that fit on the box and loads who are dying to tell you their story. Now, what I particularly love about the Tonybox is that there is no screen involved. So you can basically use the box at any moment of the day, just before bedtime or as we do during bath time. Now, Tony's is also making tremendous strides improving their product for teachers from all over the world so they can grow their lessons. And if you want to know more about what Tony's is doing, you can go to us.tonys.com/pages/Tonys-for-teachers. That is /pages/Tonys-for-teachers, where you can find lots more information about all the beautiful new products they are creating. From the classroom starter set to the school expansion pack to the 6-pack school bundle. Loads of fun and lots to learn with Tony's.
Going to your third and last challenge is, and I think we've already had snippets of it, but you say that in your growth it is challenging to gain institutional support. When you say institutional, what do you mean? Is that governmental support, or is it something else?
This is one of the sectors which has grown organically. So tech sector in Kosovo has grown organically because the companies have grown through exporting services. They've reinvested and invested in their talent, potential, and so on and so on. In all of this story, even in ICK's story, governments throughout the years, different governments, but also the local government has been completely inactive in terms of support and collaboration. So ICK today as a foundation is mainly funded by foreign donors. I will mention particularly Norway and Sweden. And in this context, we have a situation where the government, although has invested, but the public-private partnership has not been seen as a way of pushing things forward. Now, this is pretty unfortunate because in absence of an industry which would be would have a leading role in digital transformation of Kosovo, unfortunately, I must say, government remains the biggest spender in the country. So the digital transformation in Kosovo, unfortunately, again, I must say, is very closely linked and tied to the public spending in the sector.
Yeah.
Apart from the companies which are doing some good work in business export or outsourcing and so on and so on. What we're expecting is a bit more open-minded initiatives from the governments, again, at all levels and different agencies, where this sort of public partnership becomes a tool of advancing public services, but yet at the same time increase income for local companies who will ultimately become stronger and be able to employ more people, and why not produce products which then tomorrow could be a global success. So in that context, I think not being judgmental, but really being constructively advised that the government should take more a proactive role, should invest more in people, should invest more in infrastructure, should create a pretty favorable legislation and tax incentives in order to attract investors, not only for tech, but above all for tech, where people and companies would feel comfortable to come here and do some investment.
Why do you think they're currently hesitant, government?
It's just, well, first of all, we've been very unfortunate, not to bore you with too much political drama from Kosovo, but we've been unfortunate with so many governments changing in the last 10 years. I think we're having our 7th prime minister within 10 years, and that's not healthy, obviously. That's number one, and obviously there's been some other, let's say, political agendas with high priority, EU integration, dialogue with Serbia, and other political issues, which somehow doesn't let our politicians deal with maybe more immediate internal needs that oftentimes seem not so important, but in fact they are.
Yeah, and yeah, they almost forget the fact that it goes hand in hand.
Yeah,
the more attractive your economy becomes, the more attractive.
But the good thing is, I mean, there are organizations and partners which government can utilize in order to reach out the ultimate results which we are all seeking. I'm not saying that there is not a political will. Maybe we haven't been able to sit down and frankly speak about ways of how to go about it. But always staying optimistic and always staying hopeful that some things will develop. If not, I mean, there's nothing wrong. The sector will grow, will keep growing, but I think the government is missing on a great local potential that they can utilize in order to solve some of their pressing issues from within, which ultimately will translate in a better well-being for our citizens.
Yeah. What about support of academia, universities? Are they embracing innovation the way you do?
I think we cannot be so proud of the academia alone. There's different opinions about it. We have to do a little bit more in that regard. We're seeing some positive signs. Again, it's a long story. Post-war Kosovo has looked and has been oftentimes perceived as a diploma factory. People getting their diplomas just maybe to find or land a public job, which was super attractive at times. I think times are shifting. Also, we're seeing an interest of people of completing specialized training. Potentially also we're seeing universities, both public and private, engaging in these EU cross-border funds, research initiatives, there is hope again there.
Yeah. And let's continue to hope, and also let's not forget to look back, because we're talking year-on-year economic growth, year-on-year growth of companies that are, that are there and that are helping, and so it's all good news. It's just, if you're 10 years fighting the fight, I can imagine.
I will point out one more thing very quickly, just so we don't fall short, and I think we owe it. It's our diaspora. We're seeing a higher engagement of diaspora, particularly in the tech sector, which is a tremendous news for us. Now we're talking about the second, third generation of our diaspora community who lives in particularly in Western Europe and USA, people who are great professionals working in international companies who are seeing Kosovo as a place where they can do some investment. We can have their contact investments, not just in financial means, but also their network, their knowledge, and so on and so on. So this is great news, and obviously it wouldn't be happening if there was not positive news coming out of Kosovo.
Yeah, and let's not forget an event like today, ThinkTech, where companies who are interested to work with Kosovo are here, right?
Absolutely.
So it's there's definitely things happening.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking me through your challenges, Uranik. We're almost at the end of this interview, but before we close off, my two very last questions.
Yes.
And one question is around reading.
Yeah.
Are there any books, sites, newspapers, or is there anything that inspired you in your journey in growing ICK that you could recommend to others?
I've been not reading so much. And that's always good, to be honest.
Hard. That's okay.
You have to work. You stay in the afternoons, although you always have a book next to you, either on the beach or on the plane. But that sleep is always much more important, recovering from the hard work. I'm looking forward to reading actually a book by David Cohen, which is on managing boards. I think one message that I would like to pass on to our tech companies is that they need to invest on their boards as well as they do on the internal and local staff. So I'm looking forward to reading that book because I think some insight on how boards, startup boards particularly, are organized and set up could be pretty interesting. I'm not reading any other books. I like biographies a bit more. I find some inspiration there. So yeah, maybe I'll catch up on. I'll take it as a hint.
We all need to read more. Yes,
absolutely.
Definitely, Uranik, read more. But I mean, it's not necessarily. And this is a very good recommendation, by the way, David Cohen, Managing Boards. But when I say reading, it doesn't necessarily have to be a book.
Absolutely.
More something that kind of says, okay, here's my daily dose of inspiration, or what keeps me going. Thank you for saying that. Is there just continuing the line of biographies, is there any person who has inspired you that you would say, hey, that maybe who had a similar task like yours, that you say, hey, that one I can?
I mean, it might sound even cliche, but actually both of my parents are my inspiration. So for many different reasons, but obviously I think for those that know me and my family story, obviously it's another chapter of our discussion. I think this is where I find my dose of inspiration every day when I wake up. My father, now he's passed away, he was a former founder of a central bank of Kosovo. He was an institutionalist at heart, trying to create a sound and strong banking system in Kosovo, and I think he has achieved that. And I know how tough it was for him post-war Kosovo to really focus on building a banking sector in a country where, it's unrecognized. He was very courageous to introduce euro at the time when most of the countries in the region don't. So, but also that institutional, let's say, spirit and the importance of having strong institutions, particularly in transitional developments and countries like Kosovo, is super important. On the other hand, yes, my mother is obviously one of the most renowned humanists in the region, and why not globally, because she has been awarded with over 20 international awards, including Millennium Peace Prize for Women given by United Nations in New York. She's suffered all of her life helping people, and has served as a doctor during the war. Unfortunately, she was imprisoned by the Serbian regime and then held hostage for 2 years, but just to be released 2 years after the war, and then to serve several mandates as a member of the parliament, where she was the voice of, let's say, the reasoning and trying to bring everyone together. And still, she lives strong today as a writer, as a poet, as a doctor, as a humanitarian. And I think although these two characters are very similar, I believe that, yes, economic prosperity is the key to our development, but also we have to keep human at heart.
Definitely. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Quick
question, what does your mother think of the work you currently do with ICK?
She loves it. Much of it she doesn't understand why I put so many hours, but I keep reminding her that she did the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's just a different struggle of making Kosovo better.
Yeah.
And not just Kosovo, but Albania overall.
It's the genes.
It's
the genes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then to our very last question. Well, I know who I want to interview next. That would be your mother. But
Yes. Yes.
Now it's let's turn the tables. Now this is the Uranik Begu podcast, or the ICK podcast. Yeah. Who would be your guest?
Obviously, there's a broad. I've had this thought in my mind, but I'm a bit more. I go back to being a bit more nostalgic about our historic figures, and I think we need to know more about some people, and obviously their struggles, but also their goals and aims. So if we're talking from two different eras, and it's not going to be any of the famous people that maybe someone knows, but obviously one of our, I would say, inspirations would be Skënder Beg, one of our national heroes. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, it's always been my mind, I always wanted to have coffee or drink with him. Strange as it sounds, but just a leader who really went on to fight the Ottoman Empire at times with maybe others. It has that entrepreneurial spirit on him. Bill Clinton would be one of my other people. For many years, he has been some sort of an inspiration, a figure which relates to everything that we are today. We owe him our freedom, our existence, and so on. So these are the two people maybe that I would like to talk to, interview, but also Mother Teresa, one of the renowned Albanian saints now, who has really given a lot, although her early childhood has been, with lots of suffering. So understanding where do people get all this love despite of all the bad things that happen. I think with some of the things I resemble, so I would just like to make sure that we're on the same page.
Well, definitely. Well, that's quite a guest list. Skënder Beg, Bill Clinton, and Mother Teresa. Yeah. Uranik, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing with ICK. I wish you all the best.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more from you, from Kosovo and ICK.
Thank you so much also for coming and visiting, for making this possible, and really shedding a light on a small ecosystem which I believe deserves more, and hope to have you back in other occasions.
Definitely.
Thank you all.
If you liked this episode of the Teach Pitch podcast, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Philip Anderson for our beautiful theme music. This podcast was produced and edited by Natalie Piles. Project coordination by Inva Saini, and production assistance by Genta Metalia.